But then we get to this point where this article just goes, where they claim that the Nazis were strongly capitalist. The Nazis placed great emphasis on private property and free competition.
Okay, you expect me to believe that load of crap?
So why don't we talk about this today? A lot of people have been bringing this to my attention. Jacobin Magazine, who I consider to be a socialist hipster internet tabloid, or shit for short. They tweeted this out the other day. As you can see, Jacobin has, almost 382,000 followers on Twitter. They put out this tweet talking about how right-wingers, they love to insist that Adolf Hitler and the members of the Nazi Party were socialists, because that's what they fucking called themselves. The Nationalist Socialist German Workers' Party. But Nazis were actually hyper-capitalists. Are you guys getting this? And this is funny because usually when it comes to stuff like this, I usually see socialists, they don't know where to go when it comes to debates like this. Especially when it comes to communist dictators like Stalin and Mao Zedong and Lenin and Castro and the rest. Sometimes you'll see them actually embrace and own the horrible, horrific consequences of communist dictatorships. Like with Stalin and Holodomor and dekulakization, you'll see a lot of tanky socialist types say, well, the kulaks deserved worse.
Oh, you absolutely suck!
In which I think, you know what, this is great. This is wonderful. You are showing the entire world how ugly and horrible you really are. So, wonderful job. Way to go. Or you get tweets like this from Jacobin, or even this recently. This was put out by the Socialist Party, which, as you can see, has 37,000 followers on Twitter. When talking about Mao Zedong, I guess their opinion is, all the horrible things that happened under Mao Zedong's leadership, which he was doing in the name of socialism, communism, the working class. All of the horrible things that happened under Mao Zedong's watch, they were actually capitalism's fault, you guys.
Blow it out your ass.
Like, really? What a convenient excuse. How convenient. But here's the article that Jacobin tweeted out. This is actually from last year. This is not recent. This is from August of 2022. The Nazis were not socialists. They were hyper-capitalists. That's what they're going with. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this article because right here you can really see how full of shit they are. Where the article, as you can see, this is a printed interview where the questionnaire asks, if the Nazis called themselves socialists for only strategic reasons, what did their economic policies actually look like? And, not that socialists deserve any benefit of doubt or charitable interpretations of their arguments, but part of me can see where they're coming from on this. For instance, there have been times I've created videos where I have to talk about Democrats like jibber-jabbering Joe Biden or Elizabeth Warren, who occasionally they like to claim that they're in favor of capitalism. They're actually capitalists. And I'm over here thinking, what the fuck are you guys talking about? You guys claim to be in favor of capitalism, yet all you guys talk about is how you want to redistribute more wealth and get the government further involved in the economy. You guys actually want me to buy this notion that you guys are in favor of capitalism? This is what I'm supposed to believe? Let's be real. People like Joe Biden, Ro Khanna, Elizabeth Warren, they're mixed economy statists that are more statist than they are in favor of free markets, which I've talked about before in many other videos, so check those out if you want to know what I'm talking about, if you're new to my channel. So there is a part of me that can see why socialist types might take issue with the Nazis hijacking their terminology. A socialist today, or even back then, they might say that real socialism is when the public or the government or the workers or the working class controls the means of production. Some socialist types, like the Marxists, they might go a step further and say, oh, it's only real socialism when private property is completely abolished. So a socialist could probably look at how Nazi Germany operated and think to themselves, well, this is not how I would have practiced socialism. Although I would counter that Hitler and the Nazis thought that they had perfected socialism, which I've talked about before when referencing Leonard Peikoff's book, The Ominous Parallels. As you can see, this is a long quote from Hitler where he talks about how this is socialism, going on to say, what are ownership and income to that? Why need we trouble to socialize banks and factories? We socialize human beings. And also recall during Weimar and Nazi Germany, a lot of communists and socialists and Nazis, they were constantly switching sides. There were a lot of socialists and communists teaming up, joining with the Nazis. They were often called beefsteaks because they were brown on the outside, red on the inside. And also, let's not forget Adolf Hitler's friend, Benito Mussolini, over in Italy, who conceived of fascism, who was at one time a socialist himself before he became a fascist. I would also argue that Nazis succeeded to a large degree in controlling the means of production in Germany. They brought a lot of the means of production under the control of the state and of the Nazi Party prior to World War II. But okay, maybe the Nazis did not completely abolish private property or did not bring the control of the means of production to the liking of a lot of self-proclaimed socialists. I can maybe understand where socialists come from. I can maybe accept that the Nazis practiced socialism differently than most socialists would have otherwise practiced. But then we get to this point where this article just goes, where they claim that the Nazis were strongly capitalist. The Nazis placed great emphasis on private property and free competition. What are you, high? You expect me to believe this load of crap? I mean, even someone with an elementary knowledge of what happened in Nazi Germany leading up to World War II would probably conclude that the Nazis were not exactly big fans of private property rights in business. I mean, just ask the Jews at the time. I mean, did the Nazis respect the private property rights and businesses of Jewish Germans? There's even this article on Wikipedia, and I know it's Wikipedia, but again, this is a topic where there's just overwhelming evidence to show that these guys are full of shit. They have this whole article on Nazism, and just this whole section with paragraphs and paragraphs explaining about how the Nazis were fundamentally opposed to free market capitalism, thinking that it was at odds with the national interest. There were even Nazi propaganda posters around Germany that said the maintenance of a rotten industrial system has nothing to do with nationalism. I can love Germany and hate capitalism. There's even this book called The Vampire Economy. Which, from what I can tell, it was written by Gunter Reimann, who was a former member of the Communist Party in Germany, who was a lifelong socialist. Basically, what I'm saying is this guy was not exactly Milton Friedman. There's a lot of information, a lot of interesting stuff in this book. But even he, at one point, he does, you could say he's in agreement with the Jacobins when he says that this Nazi doctrine has nothing to do with communism or socialism. It is offered as a new justification for the state's use of private capital, and it is a means of placing drastic limitations upon private property rights in the national interest. And there are multiple times in this book where the author makes a distinction between this totalitarian fascist regime and what he considers to be liberal capitalist countries. So on one hand, he's in agreement with the goofs at Jacobin that, yeah, they weren't exactly in favor of socialism, but they weren't exactly lovers of private property rights either. And this chapter particularly talks about a landowner in Nazi Germany who had a lot of farmland in his family for generations, who at first, this landowner was in support of Hitler and the Nazis, thinking that they saved Germany from a communist takeover because he was worried that if the communists took over Germany, that the communists would seize his land, expropriate his land. And then he soon found out that the Nazis were as big of goons and as big of a threat to his private property rights as the communists would have been. As we can see, the book says, the owner of the property was helpless. This owner was trying to flee Germany with his assets. The owner of the property was helpless since under fascism, there is no longer an independent judiciary that protects the property rights of private citizens against the state. The authoritarian state has made it a principle that private property is no longer sacred. The decree of February 28, 1933, nullified an article of the Weimar Constitution which guaranteed private property and restricted interference with private property in accordance with certain legally defined conditions. And I'll add here, it's not like the Weimar era of Germany was laissez-faire capitalist either. It was definitely a mixed economy and a lobby system, often governed by socialist types, but as we can see, the Nazis just dialed that up to 1,000 by just getting rid of private property rights altogether. Author goes on to say, the conception of property has experienced a fundamental change. The individualistic conception of the state, a result of the liberal spirit, must give way to the concept that communal welfare precedes individual welfare. And I'm expected to believe that these Nazis were big fans of private property rights. Jacobin article goes on to say, it's true that they intervened in the free market, as if it's just kind of like a mild government intervention. I guess now might be a good time to define what capitalism means. I think of capitalism as a society that's organized around individual rights, where the government exists to protect the individual rights and property rights of its citizens. And to the extent that the government intervenes in the economy is the extent to which it deviates, abandons the free markets. But even here, they make it sound like it was just kind of like a mild intervention that you might see in places like France or the UK or the United States. No, the Nazi Party was pretty heavy-handed and well involved in the German economy. But it was also a time of systemic failure of capitalism on a global scale, was it? Almost all states intervened in the market at the time. So right here, they're trying to conflate Nazi Germany with other free market-leaning mixed economies at the time to make it sound like, they were just like all the capitalist countries. And they did so to save the capitalist system from itself. This has nothing to do with socialist sentiment. It was pro-capitalist. In a way, there's a parallel there with the way big banks were bailed out by the governments after the 2008 financial crisis broke out. And right now, what I'm getting is that the people who wrote this article, the people in this interview, they just think of capitalism as whatever the status quo is. Talking about the financial crisis. Let's also not forget the fact that the financial crisis was largely a result of the government intervening in the economy in effort to make housing more affordable, which led to the financial crisis, where the government responded by offering hundreds of billions of dollars in taxpayer-financed loans to these big banks, in some cases like Chase Bank, forcing them to take the loans. That's capitalism, according to the goofs over at Jacobin Magazine. So anyway, what do you guys think? Do you guys think the Nazis were more like the socialists, more like the capitalists? Were they their own thing? Why don't you let me know in the comment section down below?